Good afternoon, vlog fam. It is Tuesday night, and we're going to do a special edition of the vlog. Our first cooking edition of the vlog. I'm going to show you how I make palomillo. Palomilla? What's the correct pronunciation, Meredith?
Palomilla.
Palomilla. It's not O. I always go with an O, and I don't know why. Now, this is a authentic Latin American dish, I think. I found it or discovered it at a local Cuban cafe, and I loved it so much. And I realized that it's actually fairly simple. So I never actually got a recipe or anything. I just sort of created it. But then again, it's not that hard. It's a favorite around here because it's cheap, because it's really tasty, and because it involves steak. So, essentially what palomilla is grilled or fried, really, steak. And it's not just any steak. This is what you need to make palomilla, essentially, here. You need the steak. Now, this is wafer-thin steak from Winn-Dixie here in Sebring, Florida. As you can see, it's incredibly thin. So the problem with this recipe is I've only ever shopped for groceries in Sebring, Florida, and we have a fairly rich Latin cuisine culture here in Florida. So I'm not really sure if you can find this kind of steak in all grocers. I'm assuming not, but you can always get a cheaper steak, cut it thinner, or flatten it out. You just want it really thin. Then you're essentially, other than that, all you need is a red pepper, an onion. You need some kind of hot sauce, apple cider vinegar. This is probably optional, the vinegar is, but those two things you probably actually don't need. They're more to spice things up. I get the Bush's black beans seasoned recipe, some rice, black pepper, salt, olive oil, a cup for measuring, and something to open your can. And I actually forgot one already. The other thing you need is garlic, which you can do cloves of garlic, but I just get the minced kind because I'm too lazy to mince it. And it's not that much more expensive. Also, you're going to need something to fry your steak on. I use my griddle because I can get all the steak on there at once, and I can actually do the steak itself in about 3 or 4 minutes. You're going to need a pot for your rice. You're going to need a skillet for your beans. And that's it. So it's stuff that a lot of people are going to have in their kitchen already. So, this is how I make it. The first thing I do is I make my rice. And I make my rice without a rice cooker. The way I do it is, for this recipe, I want a little bit more than 2 servings because I'm fat and I like rice. And so I'm gonna get 2 cups and a half cup. And my mom, who lives in the Philippines, sort of taught me how to make rice. Essentially, you want twice the amount of water that you want than the rice, and you're gonna get like 3 times the amount of rice you put in. So if you put in a cup of rice, you're gonna want 2 cups of water, and it's gonna make 3 total cups of rice, if that makes sense. You're gonna put that on your burner, and you want to just put that on high right away. And you're going to warm that water up to a boil really fast because there's not that much water in there. In the meantime, you want to salt it. Just put a lot of salt in there. And I also, this is a trick Pastor Matt taught me, put a little bit of olive oil in it. Just a little tiny bit. This is how they taught me to make rice, and I've been doing it this way for 3 or 4 years now, and I've not had a bad batch. Anytime, I've not really branched out and trying making more quantity though, so I'm not terribly comfortable with rice, but I can do that amount and a slightly less amount that I make for tacos. And then I also will just go ahead and measure out my rice at this point. So like I said, since I'm going for 3 cups of rice, finished product, I think that this is all right, but you know, whatever. If you're watching this and you're actually going to make it, I'm thinking you've probably made rice before. Don't be afraid of rice. You know what? I did that wrong already. You want 1.5 cups of water. I already screwed this up because I'm overthinking it. You want 3 cups of water, not 2.5. So I'm going to add the other 1/2 cup of water. My ratio, I think, was right, but perhaps ignore all of my rice advice. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start to process my veggies here. And I don't know how you like to cut. I like to cut with the biggest knife possible on the biggest cutting board possible, because if I'm going to deal with veggies, I at least want to feel manly doing it. That might happen a few times, the power might flash, because we're currently experiencing extreme. This is going to make for the greatest cooking video in all time, because we're not going to have power, and I'm not going to be able to make what I want to make, and that's really going to make me upset. So we're going to cut our onion here and hope that the power flashes back on so that we can actually make rice. And we're going to try not to cut our hand. Hey, it's back! Opa!
I came to provide my flashlight.
I appreciate it. You're so awesome.
Okay, I'm gonna go now.
So I hope that that doesn't happen again and more permanently, because this will make my night much more interesting. I'm gonna chop just about half of this onion. Now, there's a pretty big onion, you can see. You want a lot of onion, so don't get a wimpy onion. Get a real man's onion. You want the full thing. Then you're gonna cut your red bell pepper. Hope this is all in shot. I don't want to have to stop my shot in order to see if this is in shot, so I think it is. And I'm going to use just about all, well, you want just about as much pepper as you do onion. I'm going to stop here midway, and I'm going to look and see that this is just about where you want it. So I'm going to pour my rice in. I'm going to kill my heat down to about 2. Obviously, your oven is going to be different than mine. Every oven in the world is slightly different. Put a man on the moon, but we can't make ovens that act the same. So then you're going to want to immediately put your lid on it and keep it on too. And do not touch it. If you touch it, you die. Then I'm going to start this skillet heating. I'm going to heat it at 5, actually 6, because I want it to get rolling here, because I'm hungry. And you're going to keep chopping. And that's just about where you want it. In the meantime, your skillet should be getting pretty hot. Something that you want to do is you're going to drain your can of black beans. I love these Cuban black beans. I have not always appreciated beans for what they can be. But when I moved to Sebring, Florida, like I said, we have a fairly rich Latin food community down here. There's a lot of really good little mom and pop Cuban restaurants and Mexican restaurants and Puerto Rican restaurants and Caribbean restaurants, and we're not that far from Miami, people, so the food culture, that's where it's at. If you want to eat good food in Sebring, you gotta eat Latin food. They helped me to appreciate beans because I hated beans for most of my life, but they really know how to do beans. Spicy beans. So this is how I make my beans. I get this seasoned recipe. I've never tried the non-seasoned recipe. You can probably do more fun things if you don't do it this way. I kind of borrowed what I'm doing from the back of the can, and I know that sounds kind of lame, but that is who I am. And now you've just got mostly beans in here. By now, your pan's nice and hot. You're going to want to add your oil. Just about a tablespoon or so of olive oil. There. You're going to take your beautiful, I'm going to bring you over here because you're going to want to see this. You're going to bring your beautiful peppers and onion, and you're going to blow right under there. And you're going to get that sauteed up. It starts to smell like heaven in your house. You could probably salt and pepper these. Again, I have the seasoned recipe beans, so it's probably not necessary. And you're going to let these simmer or saute here for about 2-3 minutes. Meanwhile, your rice is going. Everybody's getting happy because they can smell the food. Life is good. Eternal life is better. I'm going to go ahead and process the rest of my onion because I'm just going to get all of the non-fun stuff over at one time. What you're going to do is you're going to make some long onion pieces. These you're going to saute with your steak. The steak gets sauteed in onion, and I could theoretically try and get these thinner, and it would be better. But you know what's going to happen? I'm going to cut myself, and then all the internet is going to laugh at me. And I'm going to chop part of this. You want some chopped, some sliced. You want some sliced because you want sliced caramelized onions to put on your plate with the palomillo when it's done. Because that's really what you eat this dish for, is for the onions. So if you don't like onions, you're probably not going to like it. I'm going to try and get these real thin. You see that? That's how you don't cut onions. I'm sure we're going to have lots of moms in the comments explaining how to better cut onions, and I appreciate the advice because I am still a Padawan learner. If you're going to cut, use a big knife. That's what I say. So, now we're at 15 minutes in, and we've got this sauteing, and we've got that cooking. That's looking good. Now you're going to want to watch that. At some point that's going to bubble over and you're going to have to pull it off the heat. It's just part of making rice in a non-rice cooker. Everything to kind of look the same, more so than when you put it in. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to dump the beans. Straight out of the can, into the pan. Everybody's going to be a fan. Essentially, you're going to cook it like this for about 5 minutes. Until everything kind of starts to dry out. I don't know why you do it like this. It's just how I do it. See, I told you that was going to happen. Those are on their way. In a couple minutes, we're going to add liquid. The next thing I'm going to do is prep the beef. You really want to season the heck out of this. It's beef, so it's delicious. But this isn't filet mignon. It doesn't have a ton of flavor because it's so thin. So what we're going to do is we're just going to spice it up. We're going to spice it up to a ridiculous level. this is how I season Palomilla. If you think you have too much pepper, add a little bit more. And if you think you've ruined the steak because you've put too much pepper on it, you've probably added just the right amount. So you're going to take your pepper. It's the basic McCormick black pepper. You could probably use fresh ground and it would be better. But we don't have fresh ground, so this is what we're going to use. And figure out some system to line up your steak. This is not as fresh as I'd like. If you might notice it's a little brown. Don't freak out if your beef is a little bit brown. It loses its color, and it's still good for days. It's not as fresh as you might like, but you know, you're gonna survive. And like I said, this isn't about quality steak. This is about seasoning. Seriously, I mean, kill it with the pepper. Add the salt too. And then you're gonna do a little rub in. Give it a little massage. Rub it in, rub it in. Flip it, and do it again. Make sure you wash your hands when you flip back over to veggies. You're supposed to wash your hands. Because food poisoning is not a joke. You'll see that this has gotten all dried out and cooked looking. In fact, this is too dry. I have burnt these, but we are going to save them. This doesn't usually happen. That juice that we poured out, you pour it into a bowl. Don't drain it into the sink. I did that once. It ruined it. You're gonna pour that into there, and you're gonna mix it all up. I really dried these out. I had the heat too high. What happened was I put the heat up so that I put the heat up so that I could get the oil hot, and I didn't look to see. I didn't look and pull it back down. This is really fancy vinegar from my wife's cleanse. It doesn't have to be this kind. Just kind of a little bit of apple cider vinegar, or a lot of it. That was probably more than usual, but like I said, we have a liquid problem, so I'm gonna use more than usual. And then this is Valentina. This stuff is magical. Okay, you're gonna just kind of drizzle that in there to your desired level of spicy. Then you're gonna mix that all up, and it's gonna be nice. And now you're gonna turn it down, and you're gonna let that simmer pretty much for the next 6 to 10 minutes, 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes, you know, something in there, until you get your amount of liquid you want in your beans. And then make sure to pull it down to low, just to simmer until you're ready. I'm gonna put some stuff away. So because I dried my beans out, what's happening is these have already sort of hit the level that we're really going for. You'll see this is within minutes of being done. And this is like getting really close. I'm going to bump this down to low. If you've never been to a Cuban restaurant and had real good like Cuban rice and beans or any kind of Latin black beans and rice, there's a certain liquidiness that comes with them, and then they pour that over the rice. It's just the best thing ever. So that's what you're going for. I can just eyeball it, but like that's ish. You want it to be still suspended in liquid. You don't want it to be just dry beans. So what I'm going to do, this is a very cheap griddle, and I have it set for like 300-ish. As you can see, it's got, you know, such precise measurements here. You know, 300, 250, 425, you know. Yeah, whatever. Those aren't, you know, completely different numbers right next to each other. Anyway, you want to get it hot. And you're going to end up putting oil on this thing. I have tried foiling this and then putting my stuff on it. That didn't end well. But I recognize this isn't the best system. I wind up wasting olive oil when I do it this way, but I can't find a better system. So I just use what I got, and I put up with it. This is very unscientific, but it's like I said, I'm working with what I got. We're gonna add this. Just kind of add a line. We're gonna, like I said, we're making a bed of flavor for the steak. Now throw the onions on there. Kind of disperse them. You're gonna want your tongs. This is, you probably want about a tablespoon. I'm actually going to get a measuring thing out just for you guys. But you're just going to disperse it amongst, yeah, you're going to want about a tablespoon of minced garlic. I'm just going to play with this as it cooks. These have gotten kind of dry, so I'm going to pull them off of the heat. They hold heat really nicely, and we're going to be ready to eat here in about 3 or 4 minutes. You can see they're starting to get a little floppy, not as rigid. I know some of you are like, I know Ben, I know about sauteing onions, but you know, I like to make this accessible for those who have all onion sauteing experience. Right about now, because I'm getting impatient and I'm hungry, I'm going to add the beef. Get a nice sizzle from it. My burners are along the edges here, so I got to kind of add it in accordance to how the burners are set up. There you have it. Meanwhile, over here, that's off the burner because it's ready to go. And you know when rice is ready when you can tip it over and not see liquid. It's not quite there. It's going to be a little bit too wet by the time we get to it, but it's not going to be the end of the world, I promise. I'm going to give it a little bit more heat. Because as soon as this steak is done, we're putting it on a plate and we're serving it. It cooks really fast. Flip it over. Make sure you get the onion flavor on both sides. Don't worry that the onion's underneath the steak. It's going to give it the flavor you want. You want to get as much onion steak contact as possible. So you start to see it gets brown. I usually flip it one more time just to double check. You'll be able to see there's still some pink in there. You could serve it at this point. I don't know. I just give it the flip. Part of it is getting that flavor in there. I think that you're not going for moist meat. Doing it this way, you're never going to get moist steak. So you're just trying to pack in as much flavor, even though it's kind of shoe leathery. I mean, it's, you know, it's definitely, you're going to need a steak knife to cut this very thin steak, but trust me, the flavor is where it's at. Turn the power off. You see our rice is a little bit closer. There's still some liquid in there, but it's forgiving. It's rice, people. Now we're going to take our plate. We're going to plate this up. 2 each. Make sure you don't waste those onions. Don't leave those onions laying around. You gotta use them. You gotta eat them. There it is. You got your steak on. And now you're gonna grab your rice. You're gonna fork the rice up, fluff it up a little bit. You guys know this. If you cooked rice, I mean, this is rice. It's not that hard, people. And you're gonna put your rice on the plate. You're gonna make a nice rice bed for the beans. No judgment on portions, okay? Listen, we just worked out. We need our protein and our carbs. You're gonna get all that liquid back in from the bottom because the top got dried out. See how good they look? I'm gonna pour them all. And that is how you make palomilla. This is a 30-minute meal. This is easy stuff. And you feel so cool having made something looking as authentic and yummy as palomilla.